Welcome to Rafting with Kaylee. I've been to a lot of women's events recently, and they aren't very solutions oriented. We all know the issues, but I want to talk about solutions. So I had a chat with some other ladies who are professionals in the outdoor industry. But before we begin, if you'd like to support my work, check out the link below.
I'm Megan. I work for AQUAGLIDE. My primary sport is whitewater kayaking.
I'm Alex. I work for Air and Marketing Director. My primary sport is rafting.
I'm Katie. I'm with PETZL, and we're into biking, cycling, skiing.
I'm Jamie. I work for ZEAL Optics. I'm their Colorado rep. My primary sport is skiing. I grew up ski racing.
I'm Stephanie. I work with SCARPA, and I'm skier, biker, runner. No water sports whatsoever.
So for me, I grew up with being one of the few women in the industry, and so at least in my little bubble, and so got taught by men, which is great, but there's a lot that we do differently as women than men do, and so I had to kind of like retrain myself with a lot of that, and learning to muscle through things and then getting injured and being like, I could probably learn like technique a little bit better than just having to like try to force everything. So was wondering, like, as a young woman getting into the outdoor industry, what did you need or want from an outdoor or from a female role model that maybe you didn't have, maybe you did have, and what was that experience like for you?
I think it's helpful to have a mentor, and kind of help just guide you in anything you're really doing at that age. As a young woman, you're still kind of finding your way into what sports you're super passionate about, or just in general, like where you're going to go with your career. So having a mentor in general, a female mentor in general, is always a good idea. And it also really kind of helps boost your confidence in certain realms as well, right? I mean, asking for a guy to give you, some rah is really hard to get a lot of times. Right? It's more, if anything, a competitive thing where we're trying to prove ourselves that we can be part of their event or crew or whatever. So having a female mentor, I think, can just help kind of give you some praise that you may not get from some other guys. But
And I would say, like, my experience would be more in skiing, and I feel like, unfortunately, I adapted all my sports based on the boyfriend I was dating at the time. I would just pick up whatever he was into, and he would be left teaching me how to do it. And my experience was kind of like, well, of course I can't do that. He's a guy. And so I don't think I would push my limits as much when I was following a guy as much as a female, because then it's kind of like, well, if she can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And it just is such a different mind flip when you're following someone that feels like a peer instead of someone who is above your level, where I think you push yourself a little bit more willingly instead of unwillingly when it's a woman.
Yeah, I agree. I think like kind of what both of you guys were saying, it's good to have like the mentors, but also the peer side of it. Because like I've actually started all of my sports like working with other women, and I think it's made me a stronger athlete in general.
Right,
I took ski racing, was the first thing I did by myself. Like I was the only girl on our ski racing team, and I think it definitely helps to like build that network of other women around you, whether it be like other women in the outdoor industry or friends or people that you like to do these sports with. But it definitely takes the pressure off to try and constantly be reaching this level that, I mean, men physiologically are stronger than women. Like in
you have
a lot
little
of
bit
sports.
different fear filter.
Like it is different. And I think it's like the people that are just constantly trying to reach that same level, like maybe that's not the level you should be trying to reach necessarily.
Yeah, I think seeing women at the level I wanted to be at, paddling the rivers I wanted to paddle, was huge for me. I was really lucky and learned in a group of all women. I was taught by men, but there was a group of 4 of us learning to paddle at the same time, and it made a huge difference for us to be going through the same milestones and seeing the same things and celebrating the small wins, like you were saying, having each other cheer each other on. But I also she wasn't a mentor, she was too busy to teach me to paddle, but she was paddling the Green River Narrows, which for those of you who don't paddle is like the Southeast Class 5 Steep Creek Classic. Like it is the pinnacle. Once you get to that point, it opens up as a world of paddling. And I knew she was paddling the Narrows. And seeing her paddle the Narrows and knowing that she was paddling the Narrows and she was cheering for me to paddle the Narrows was such a huge thing for me. Because of course guys are paddling that. They were paddling bigger stuff, but seeing her paddling it and being like, okay, Jack learned at the same place that I did.
Yeah.
She was doing the same things I did. She's been paddling for longer than me. I can get to that point.
And like that inspirational
Yeah.
aspect. Yeah.
And she was the person who took me down for my first time. And like I'm getting chills thinking about it now because it was such a magical experience to have her cheering for me and being there to celebrate the small wins. And it wasn't just a bunch of dudes being like, "Oh, you got it. You can." I hate that attitude. Like the guy being like, "You have the skills." Like whatever. No, I wanted a little bit more than that. I wanted to talk through it. I wanted someone to say, "Okay, you did this, and this. So what does that mean for me?"
Just breaking that down, like, hey, what does that look like? Hey, I got this. Like, what does that look like though? Because I don't feel like I got this.
Right.
Exactly.
No.
And so breaking down,
Or I've heard the term like you've skied steeper than this before.
Same.
I am scared of this right now.
Yeah.
Does it
I get that with mountain biking a lot too. Like I just started mountain biking, and it's like my fiance is always like, "Well, you ski like way crazier stuff," and I'm like, "That is completely different. This is not the same at all."
No, I mean, similar experience like skiing wise, like ski racing, there was only like 3 or 4 of us girls, but rafting, I guess I kind of got really lucky. When I started guiding, there was a couple other females on the crew already. Granted, like most of the time you're thrown on a boat with boys and they were like, "Why aren't you getting to where you need to be?" And it's like, just give me a second, like, because I learned from a female, so I learned, like, I'm not as strong as that boy, so I cannot, muscle my way across this river. Like, I have to figure out to read the water. Like, oh, I can put my right tube over here, and this line is like, it's gonna pull me where I need to go, and things like that. So I had a little bit different experience. So it's like I grew up having that, a little bit female influence. But it is now nice now I'm older. It's like I want to get back into hardshell kayaking, and there is now kind of like a group in Boise where I'm from that's all of these women that are supporting you, and so I'm like, oh, no, I'll go back in, and I'm not just gonna have to jump in with all the boys and like they have to like suck it up while I like figure it out again and learn. So
I think it's really important though for girls, young women, anybody really, that to feel like they can still go out and learn from the boys. Like, I mean, I did, but I feel like if you don't have like if you don't have somebody to like look up to, or there's no athletes for you to like know about to kind of lure you in, or a group to lure you in, like learning from the guys can actually make you so much stronger, mentally and physically, because you're learning at like with the most like almost like aggressive type behaviors, right? You're exposing yourself to areas that you may not touch with women for several years,
and like wanting to push yourself further.
So I mean, I don't want to like ever undervalue the guys, and what they can bring to teaching us something, but that's how I learned, was kind of like you. Like, my boyfriend was doing it at the time, or just the crew. I had always hung out with dudes, and I was like, okay, these guys are doing it, I guess I'll do it, And then come to find out you love it. And then you're that much better faster because they're saying comments like that. You ski harder, you got this, you can do it. They're a different kind of cheerleader.
And you strive almost to like get that kind of compliment a little bit.
And I would say, there's like a place for both, because I progressed super quickly because of like my male influences and how they were trying to push me to get better faster, but the comfort level was very different for me. As in, for example, I took an AV2 course, a hut-based AV2 course that was all men, 20 men, and I felt really out of my comfort zone as far as they were wanting to ski the hardest thing, and I was just wanting to learn. And then I had a backcountry course in women, so it felt to me, well, what are you comfortable with? Like, we just want to cheer you on with whatever you want. It was such a different, I think there's definitely a place for both, but it was definitely a different feeling.
There's so many groups and clubs these days that, like, even if you learn from the guys, like, go hang out with the girls just to, like, polish your skills.
And feel supported and feel like, even if you don't ski that, we're still going to learn you.
I find that doing the activities with all female groups or majority female groups fires my stoke more than anything. And you're absolutely right. Like, when I'm learning to bike as well right now too, and there aren't that many female athletes in Denver and Oregon. And so I bike mostly with men. They're so much faster than me that sometimes I'm like really sad about it.
Why am I even out here?
Yeah, but
then I like rush sometimes.
yeah, I'm like,
It's
I'm just
I-
not
holding them
good.
back.
Yeah.
But then you do something with females and your stoke is just so high.
Yeah.
Like I remember my first time paddling with all women on the Chiowa back in North Carolina. And I was sitting in an eddy watching, there were 6 of us just boofing the eddy after me. And it was the most magical, like one of the most stoked I've ever been in my life. And so they are different. One is for you're going to feel uncomfortable, you're going to feel really pushed, it might be really hard. And then one is for just like pure joy, firing the stoke, reminding you why you do these things, or just for the love of it.
Because it's definitely also important, like the side of things where like you're saying, you know, you do feel uncomfortable and like you feel super out of place. I did a trip to Japan last year, and one of the days we went backcountry, like again, I was the only girl. And it was like, I do think it really helped a lot also because I was like, all right, like I can do this. I ski better than a lot of these guys. And it like is that reminder too, where you are constantly pushing yourself and it's almost that competitive side comes out. You're like, no, I can do this.
Yeah. And the feeling of after when you're pushed to do something you don't want to do and you do it, it's the best.
That uncomfortable feeling.
And I might never go there if I was only getting out with really supportive women. Because I don't care if I did it either way. I might never get that feeling.
A chick would probably acknowledge you and recognize your stoke and your accomplishment, and dude would be like, okay, let's go.
They're like, oh, you'd probably be cheering for you.
I think that's what's cool though about as women grow in all of these sports is that we are keeping up with the men. We're doing things that are just as badass, and so we're able to find the women who are supportive, you know, maybe a bit more emotionally intelligent, but can also push us and challenge us and help us get into that uncomfortable space that ultimately makes us better athletes.
Yeah, I think because I grew up with brothers, and then I was like one of the only female of my cousins, and then I went into the outdoor industry and then the tech industry. So I've always been around a lot of boys. And so I think it's, you know, really good because they do push you out of your comfort zone. You've done this something harder, you can do this. And while we might feel like uncomfortable, it's like, okay, well, you know what, you were right. Like, okay, I can push this. But I think it's really helpful and you know, beneficial to have females around because it's like you can break down technique more, because I need to focus more on technique and how to get around the eddy and how to finesse this wave and then go through and do these different strokes rather than just force my way and make the rack what I want to happen. So it's like building those techniques so I'm not injuring myself, but I can do the same thing with significantly less like wearing down myself and having to, you know, be super tired at the end of this because I was just trying to muscle it rather than like finesse it. So I think it's definitely beneficial to have both men and women as mentors and teachers and things like that. So yeah, definitely don't want to say, you know, not to have men teach us because I think
we need both.
We need both. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
I think the lack of intimidating factor, learning from people, or, you know, when you're first entering a new sport and you're surrounded by the like big burly, like raw dudes, like it's pretty intimidating.
Super.
And then when you see a woman or 2 or 3 or more, like you just automatically feel more comfortable in that space.
And you're like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
I will get there.
Yeah. Instead of feeling like you can't really compare yourself to their performance.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think I had a different level. When I'm following a female around in the backcountry, I have this different level of trust.
Yeah.
Than when I don't know what it is in this.
You know, they're not
somewhere.
They're not trying to like accidentally or purposely sandbag you. You're like, you'll be fine.
But I have this different calm about me when I'm following a woman than when I'm following a man.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever we do, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
But I don't always have that feeling.
I noticed this winter though, because I skied with mostly like ex-US ski teamer men.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I better get good quick. Like, not that I was a bad skier to begin with, but we would do a lot of backcountry stuff, and there was choices, like they would have probably made some choices that were a little riskier, but then it was me learning, like kind of finding my voice on like the second or third trip where I was like, I don't think we should do that. I think we should go back this way because that way, you know, just look at the fall line, like all of these things. And so it was almost nice to find my voice, and then it was like, you know, we got back to the trucks and they're like, oh yeah, that was a smart choice, like thank you for like speaking up. And so it's almost nice to have at least one female in a group like that, because you're always going to have that little bit more of like an emotional attachment to like the hesitancy. Yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know if that's the best choice after you dig
And
your hole and everything. And
I
it's like,
experienced the same thing in my Avi 2 course where I ended up being the only one to speak up when something felt wrong.
Yeah.
And the guy that was teaching us said that that's super common.
Yeah.
For it to be the woman that is the one to voice a concern.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool because it's an intimidating situation to speak up in.
Yeah.
But it does
So,
force us to be confident
Yeah.
and speak what we're thinking, where maybe every other person is thinking the same thing, but not.
But they're more competitive to be like, oh, I'm not going to be the
person
that
steps back from this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was actually a situation a couple months ago where I was with a group of four of us, and we had we had a raft and R2 raft, a hard shell kayak, and a inflatable kayak, and we went on this really hard class 5 section of river, and our friend who was in the IK ended up. We were looking at this big hard rapid. It's called the Rose, and I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, they were planning to go left at this, or right up this one rapid. I was like, I don't know about that, but I didn't say it out loud because I was a little bit getting the camera behind, so I was a little bit slower. I'm like, okay, we're gonna go run it. And
were you the only female?
I was the only female, and I didn't speak up when I was like, I think that's a bad idea because if you flip at the top, like there's an undercut that you can go into. But they were stoked and went to go run it. Well, he ended up flipping at the top and getting stuck in the undercut and broke his leg. And he finished the run, but it was super, super scary. We thought we lost him for a few seconds, and as we were kind of, he was fine. He broke his leg, but we didn't know that for a couple days, And I was super bummed that I didn't say anything out loud because they were like, we were talking about it later and breaking down the situation of what led up to that. And I was like, I really wish you would have said that because of, that probably wasn't the best idea, but the other guys were stoked. Okay, let's do this. And the first guy was okay, but he was a little wobbly in there. So I think it's super important that we do speak up, even if we don't feel super comfortable. And I think that's definitely a trait that is important to have on those trips.
And I feel like a lot of the times, like, I don't know if it's maternal instinct or what it is, but it seems like women just kind of have more intuitive feelings about that stuff and are better at listening to those like gut feelings.
Yeah.
And it seems like oftentimes that probably is why they speak up, because they're like, oh, I have a bad feeling. And I feel like men a lot of the times tend to overlook that a little bit more.
I think they're more competitive both with themselves and with other people.
Yeah.
So think about their situation, right, where their boys are like, nah, dude, shut up. Do it. Right? Come on, you got it. Whereas, like, we've probably already been in that situation where they're like, it's okay, like, you can do it.
Yeah.
And there's just like a different type of attack, I guess, if you were going to speak up as a female versus a male.
Yeah. And is there some sort of biological self-preservation feeling that is stronger than women? I've never researched this, but yeah, it does seem like a different intuition versus like, how are we going to survive this moment, not how are we going to do the raddest thing.
Yeah. I know, and I always wonder if that's like a
I don't know if
maternal
it is a
type
thing
or
what.
Well, and you think about like in the history of mankind, it's like men were typically the hunters and women were typically the gatherers. So we have these different skills and different things that are biological as well. And like, men can really hone in on maybe a rapid or something like that and focus on that. Whereas in women, we're looking at the big picture a little bit more and have that more peripheral vision.
And that's why it's important to have that voice.
Yeah.
For sure.
So for your example, they might be focused on that line of what they want to ski, and you're like, hey, did we look at what's going on around us? Did we see that there's a birch room or something like that that looks like maybe not good to go?
Should be looking out for.
There's other people there too, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we as women also do, is we think about
Everywhere,
right?
dynamics.
Versus versus like finding the self-satisfaction from something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying this is
This
across
is
the
not
board.
this is
In
not
general,
across
I
every
think I see that.
situation.
Right. Every group dynamic's different, but just kind of general things. So we kind of already started talking about it, but like, what traits allowed you to achieve success in the outdoors, and like, what perspective have you guys brought to the team that wasn't present previously. So we're kind of already talking about that. But are there any other things that you guys notice, like, you know, most of us come from being one of the few females in that industry or in our circle. Is there something that you brought that maybe wasn't there before?
Being a female
Yeah.
helps to a degree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Especially with the movement of trying to be a little bit more diverse and inclusive. But even before that, it's going back to the kind of the role model and putting yourself out there, being authentic, and people see the value that you can bring by doing that or by speaking up. I mean, if you have those kind of traits, then others see that and they see that in you and they welcome that into a company. Right?
Yeah.
They need that in a company too.
Yeah, and I mean on the same page, like you said, being a female, I'm the only woman on our sales team.
Yeah.
And I still am, but I also was the only woman on the marketing side. And since then, I came over from the marketing to the sales side. And since then, we now have, I think, 6 women in the office. So I think even like, I don't want to say like I paved the way by any means, but it's like just having that female influence, I think attracts other female influence, and it just brings that different
Somebody's
dynamic.
got to be the guinea pig.
Yeah. Someone's first thrown into the fire.
Yeah.
I think, like, for me, I think I'm thinking about this more sports versus job. But I got into some situations that I wasn't comfortable with because I didn't ask the right questions. And so now when I'm with someone who's maybe just getting into it, I check in with them about their comfort level on things, which is just something, it's like when you're new at something, you don't even know what to ask. You don't know when to say you're not comfortable and so I think just like up front, I feel like how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel confident? Is there something else you want to do? Like, asking someone else the questions I wish I would have asked. Something that I think it can be translated to the job as well. But
I think that's one of the best examples for me of kind of the difference and this is more sport, but I think it's in job as well, is, and it wasn't me, it was one of my friends. We were going to paddle section that I'd paddled before, and I'd actually broken both my ankles a lot. And it was my first time paddling since then, and my friend that I was with when that happened had actually died paddling that winter. And so it was a really emotionally charged section of river for me. But I was fully capable of it. Like, I paddled it years before when I was not as good of a kayaker, and all my guy friends, it was a group of guy friends that I paddled with all the time. I trust them more than anyone. And our girlfriend, and our girlfriends, and they were like, oh, you're totally capable of it. Like, we're not going to push you, which is why I love them. And she looked at me and she was like, what do you need to feel supported? What can I do for you to help you realize and make you feel comfortable on this river? And that for me was like, it broke it open. Because I was like, wow, yeah, I need someone to be with me at the SEAL launch for when I get really emotional, which is inevitable,
Yeah.
I need someone to do X, Y, Z. And for her to recognize that and ask that, I don't think the guys would ever have done that. Not because they don't care about me, not because of any of that. They just don't recognize that need. And I think that ability to tap into our emotional intelligence is what makes us powerful, realistically, and what makes us strong in everything that we do, not just sport, but in job.
Yeah.
Really?
And recognizing what you felt like someone else could be feeling, and maybe saying it for them when they can't say it.
Yeah.
That's something that women do really well.
Yeah.
I know I've been out with ski partners, and I have a friend that's kind of beginning to get into it, and I can see what she's feeling in her eyes, but not saying. And it's kind of like you end up being a voice for someone who's getting into it and doesn't know.
And helping them find their voice. That's the biggest thing is, I mean, this winter skiing with mainly men, that was hard to find my voice. And then it finally got to the point where it was like, I have to speak up because I'm nervous. Like, yes, you've pushed me and I've done these shoots that I would never do on my own. And like, yes, this, that, and the other. But it just gets to a point where it's like you need to. And I feel like I've learned that in the industries that I've worked in. I was a raft guide where there was 3 of us girls total on a, you have 18 to 20 dudes that you work with every single week. And it's, it's one girl and 5 guys. And yes, they grow up and they become your brother and a protector. Yeah. But you have to find your voice in that because they will just take over. And then being at Air, I'm the youngest female at Air. 2 are older that aren't in paddling at all. And then we have one who runs our showroom. And her and I, we paddle together when we can, but it's like without us having a voice in our office, like some of the boys would probably make really silly decisions. I'm in marketing, and sometimes, you know, my voice, like I will say, like, we have a new color coming out this year that I pushed really, really hard to get, and then they shut me down, and I went up to our sales team, and I kind of, you know, went in and I was like, this isn't fair, this is what I want, this is what I'm seeing, you know, blah, 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 and kind of sold my pitch, and they're like, they got on my side, and they're like, no, this, I mean, if this is what she's seeing, we need to trust it, and hopefully it does follow. But without finding that voice, like, you're gonna get lost, and like that's my biggest thing, is like trying to help younger women, like, in like, especially with your young paddlers, helping them find that voice. Like, we have an ambassador that is also theirs. Her name's Vay, and when she reached out to me, she was 13 and wanted to run the same stretch as like Huck Finn did, and that was, so she, you know, we have people reach out all the time wanting product, and they're just like, we do cool stuff, we want a boat, and it's like, okay, sure, whatever. But this 13-year-old girl wrote me the most well-written email I've ever had, explaining what she wanted to do, why air was important to her, you know, this, that, and the other. And she just wanted a discount. And I was like, no, I am giving you. You know, it was one of those, like, no, like, I'm so excited for you, and I want to see all of these things you do. And working with her and her parents has been amazing. But that's like, I want to help you. Like, how can I help you reach your goals? How can we be supportive? And like having other young females kind of showing other girls their age that this is something they can do is huge. And we try to support that at AIR. And you know, all of the guys on our team have kind of seen my vision and have jumped on board and are willing to have the open mind to like follow suit. But yeah.
I think another thing that has been a powerful realization for me in the past few years is kind of just the power of owning the femininity, the things that make you different. When I first got in the outdoor space, I was like, I have to be tough. I can't show emotion. Like, I'm going to dress like a guy. I'm not going to like I have unicorns on my socks right now. I never would have done that. And I was like so scared of owning the feminine side of me. And through other women that, you know, I saw women rafting in tutus and glitter. And I was like, wait, that is badass. And recognizing that, like, those things that make us different isn't bad. It makes us more powerful. And, you know, we can start a dance party and, like, that's going to be a great time. You know, we can spread the stoke. Because I think I've noticed that in women in particular, you know, we're so much more open about, like, our unadulterated excitement than men can be a lot of times. And that brings something really powerful to a team, both in work and in sport. And I think owning those things that make us feminine is really powerful, and we should own that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should all hang. This is so much
fun.
We should all have so much fun.
This was such an awesome conversation. I want to keep it going. So I have a question for you, and I'd love to hear your answers in the comments below. My question is, what did you need when you first started in the outdoors from other women?